Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Arts Play Radio. It's me, Ike Callaghan, and this week I am flying solo by myself with our usual co-host, Eskimo Hito, being whisked away, apparently, for our birthday celebrations. So it's going to be interesting to see how we get on. We'll wait for our guest this week. I'm very excited to speak to, and once they join us, we'll get going for sure. But in the meantime, perhaps I should tell you about NFT London, which is coming up next week. Where we will be hosting, that's we as in Cool Dudes Club, which is the little network that I am involved with, and we are hosting an event called Luxapalooza 22, where we will be sharing some space in a Mayfair pub with a bunch of artists and collectors and various other types, and we will be having some drinks. There'll be some live art happening, and then I will hopefully we'll be able to give away some stuff as well. So it will be a brilliant thing. Sorry, I'm just pressing buttons as I speak now. This is where Esky usually helps me out by talking when I don't have to talk. In any case, without any further ado, and I'll talk more about that at the end of the show, I think, but without any further ado, please let me introduce to you our guest this week. It's the amazing NFT Murder. Welcome.
Hello, how's it going?
It's going brilliantly. Thanks so much for joining us today. Really excited to have you on. And as usual with what we do on here, is I'll ask you to tell us a bit about who you are, to sort of whatever extent you feel comfortable with, and the sort of art that you create, how you describe it to people who haven't come across your work before.
Sure. NFT Murder, I've been here for like a little over a year. I think I started in August of last year. I guess I would call my art like kind of like cartoon pop art style. I don't really like to like put it into a box, and it's just what I like to draw. I'm not sure exactly how to define it into a genre, but yeah, I'd say it's like cartoony, kind of fun style. Sometimes I do abstract, sometimes I do like more traditional like character art, and yeah, that's about it.
No, that's excellent. I don't think you should feel I don't think like you should feel under any pressure to kind of box yourself into any specific kind of generic descriptions. I do think like yeah, there's a kind of wild, crazy, and really like aesthetically pleasing sort of vibe to all of your stuff, and it's easy to see why it appeals widely. Um, so, can you give me a bit of a feel for your kind of like your creative background? Are you an artist in terms of studying stuff, or is it something that you've always done?
Yeah, I started when I was like pretty young. I'm completely self-taught. I I took one drawing class at community college, and like before that, I think my last time I took an art class was in like middle school. But I just draw constantly. I've done it for a long time. It was probably like 7 years ago or something that I bought a Surface Pro with my tax money, and that's when I really started getting into digital art. Before that, I actually started on a phone. I had a Note 3 and I had a little stylus. So I started using Artflow and I started learning there. So that was like the beginning of learning digital art.
And before that, were you just making conventional sort of traditional art?
Yeah, I used to paint a lot, but I'm not really good at it. I never really got to a point that I thought my paintings were like something to be super proud of. So I kind of moved more into like just filling up sketchbooks and like pencil drawings and ink, uh and that's like where I'm most comfortable is like drawing as opposed to painting. I'm getting a little better like with digital painting. I kind of play with it sometimes, but like for the most part line work is like my favorite thing to do.
I can see that, and I can see that in your work that it has that feel of a a sort of a sketchbook where you've wanted to fill the page with as much interesting stuff as possible that um, but you've only got one page to fill at a time, so you're just cramming it all in, and there's so much going on, it's really like arresting to the eye. Is that a fair description, do you think?
Yeah, I'd say so. I really respect people that can do minimalism because I just cannot I can't stop until the page is completely full. I get like obsessive over it. um,
Are you still making physical stuff as well as the digital stuff, or have you just moved completely onto sort of that tablet format now?
I pretty much moved completely on. I still have like a little animation desk in my studio area, but I rarely get time to use it because most of my time's preoccupied trying to like make NFTs that I feel are good enough, and then trying to actually sell them. So like a lot of my time is comprised of Twitter and then doing digital drawing. I rarely have time to like sit down and draw something with pen and paper.
It's interesting that is that I think that the sort of the Web3 thing, while it narrows the space between the artist and the audience, but it also compresses that time between making and selling into like what might have been a months long period into days, maybe hours between one and the next. Does that ever feel like a lot of pressure to you?
Yeah, it is. And like it is a constant job. I think a lot of people when they start in this space, they kind of think of it as like the artists here that are like making it, quote unquote, like a lot of us are struggling as well. That we're just like having fun, but it's a constant job. Like I I can't remember the last time I took a full day off. I just constantly go between Twitter and drawing, and like you said, there's like almost no separation of it. So it's almost like completely engulfed my life of like promoting myself and doing my art. And then once my art's done, I'm immediately back onto Twitter to try to promote it. And then once I feel like I've promoted it enough or that I've engaged enough on Twitter, it's right back to the art, and, which is fine. I love doing that. But I think that's like a common misconception people have that when you start to find success that it becomes easier, and it doesn't. It becomes way more work.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess you have to love it, don't you? You have to love what you're doing, and believe that's what you should be doing.
Yeah, that's it exactly. It doesn't feel like work because I love doing it. But like thinking about it, I'm like, I can't remember the last time that the other day I played Overwatch 2 for like 3 hours, and like I loved Overwatch 1. I was way into that game. But like I spent like 3 hours playing a game and I felt so guilty. I was like, oh, I'm failing. I gotta go get back to work.
Yeah, I think we can identify with that. What do you say is the sort of stuff that it inspires you when you set out to make a new piece?
So like cartoons are a huge inspiration for me. Like all the old like Cartoon Network cartoons, Courage the Cowardly Dog, things like that were huge inspirations. Invader Zim, like Jonan Vasquez is one of my favorite artists of all times. I'm also like really big into surrealism, and I like to kind of try to make cartoonish surrealism. Like I think that's a little fun to put these cartoon characters in these like weird circumstances that just kind of seem odd and off. Um, Also like street art, things like that. So those are probably my biggest inspirations.
So I could see that all makes a lot of sense when I look at your work. What is the process then when you go to make something? Are you sitting down, like dedicating an amount of time to saying, okay, now I'm working today, or are you working like drawing when the inspiration strikes? How are you going about that?
So I draw every day, and I have for like 5 years now, something like that. I remember hearing it's a kind of like a weird thing that I heard that uh like Jerry Seinfeld makes a lot of comedy, and he like has a new set every year or whatever, and like he makes an incredible amount, and it's because every day he writes one joke, regardless of whether it's good or not. He just takes the time out of his day to do that. So I kind of like started applying that to art of like no matter no matter how inspired you are or like what's in your head or like no matter how you feel about it, just take like a little bit of time, even if it's just half an hour, to sit down and draw something, just anything. And like that really helped to like it helped to get to a point that it just feels like breathing anymore. It's just second nature. I feel uncomfortable when I'm not drawing. So I don't really like dedicate certain amount of time to certain pieces or anything like that. I just like I sit there and do it, and I usually have multiple pieces going at once because I get distracted easily. So if I get bored on something, I like to just open up a new page and just start something different and just go from there.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, this is a question we ask. We didn't start out asking it, but we have asked it pretty regularly. Is how do you know when you have finished a piece? Like, what's the process for you mentally when that? How do you assess that?
It's I don't know, it's hard to describe. It's I can just see when I've finished a sketch and I'm like there's if I add something else, it's going to be distracting. So and I'm not sure exactly like I don't know, it's kind of just an intuitive thing that I'll sketch until I'm like, okay, this is the perfect amount of objects on the page. And
Yeah,
now it's time to start like doing the inks and then I'll do the coloring. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly what makes me think that there's enough. It just when it looks good to my eye, I'm like, all right, this sketch is done. It's time to start finishing the piece.
yeah, that's and so when you're putting something aside, like you say, you work on multiple things at a time. What is it that draws you back? Is it just the distance and the time, and then you think, oh, I've got new things that I can add to this, or is it a different perspective that offers?
It's usually that I'm working on a piece and I get to a point that I don't want to do something. I'll just be like, I don't feel like doing the line work right now. Like, I want to do more sketching, or I don't feel like doing the coloring. That happens a lot. That like, I get to the coloring stage and I'm like, I don't feel like figuring out what the colors are, and I'm just gonna move on to the next piece, and I'll come back to this. And then eventually, like, I come back to it and I'm refreshed, and I'm like, oh, this is easy. This is obviously how I want this piece to look. And
Yeah,
I think that's important actually as an artist to take a second to look away from your art and then come back to it. Because usually when you come back to it with a fresh eye, you see all those things that you didn't before because you were looking at it too hard.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. And you are like, from the sounds of it, you approach your digital art in the same way as you would if you were a line art illustrator on paper. You're sketching, you're inking and coloring in much the same process. Is that always the way that it works for you?
Usually, um, occasionally I'll start with just like putting down colors, especially for like some of my work on objects. I usually use Tezos as like a place to experiment a little bit because it feels like it's more of an artistic community as opposed to Ethereum, which is more like investor based, if that makes
Right,
sense.
right.
So like a lot of my pieces on Tezos, I'll just like throw down colors and then like start putting in like experimenting with brushes and trying different things, and so like the process for those pieces are different.
Yeah. And do you find like that's a kind of it's interesting to have that sort of space where you can do a little bit more experimental stuff. Do you find generally the communities that you have become part of through the sort of Web3 process, or the do you find them supportive and other artists supportive to each other?
Oh yeah. Yeah, the artists in this community have been so supportive. It's really amazing to me like how many people like I love now and I talk to daily and like I care about very deeply, and we support each other. We're constantly retweeting each other and shouting each other out. I've like made connections through people. I've even
Yeah,
had like collectors that collect from friends that are like, "Oh, I saw your art because this person retweeted you," which is really awesome.
that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what does a sort of typical day or a sort of creative session look like for you? Do you sit down in a studio space, or like, I mean, you mentioned a studio space earlier. Is that a separate space, or is that just a what, cornered off bit of your room? How's that work?
Yeah, it's just a room in my house. I have like all my stuff in here. I'm literally like, I'm sitting in here now and I have a little couch that I sit on. My dog sits next to me. He's sleeping right now. And like, I usually just sit here with my iPad and draw. I have a PC that occasionally I'll play around on. Most of my work comes from Procreate. So a lot of the times it's just me sitting here on my iPad.
Yeah,
But yeah, like, occasionally I experiment with other things. I was playing with VR the other day and it made me super seasick, motion sickness. Uh,
and are you listening to music while you work, or are you work in silence? How does that work for you?
I have to have something playing. I switch it up. Sometimes I'll like throw on like something on Netflix or whatever. Or, like I listen to music sometimes or YouTube videos, occasionally tutorials. I switch it up, but I have to have background music. I'd drive myself insane if I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, that also makes sense to me from the kind of feeling I get from your work is that there's like a influx of media going on at the same time. There's a kind of hyperactivity in the pictures themselves that feel informed by a range of media. Is that fair, do you think?
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's kind of like how my brain is. That there's just constantly a thousand things going on. So, and art helps to like organize that. Of like, okay, let me sit down and put all of this somewhere.
Yeah. Are you doing this full time then? Is that, or are you having to fit this around work as well?
Currently, I'm doing it full time. Like, I'm not super successful, and like, I haven't had to go out and do any like side hustle work in a while. But like, if worst comes to worst, I'll go out and do like Uber Eats or whatever and make deliveries to like make ends meet.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's been a while since I've had to, and I'm super blessed for that.
that's amazing. And so, like, I usually ask people how your sort of creative work fits into your everyday life, and it's kind of amazing if you can be making that work as a full time thing. Are you? How do you space out your day? Do you take time out to sort of put things down and head out into the world, or are you kind of head down for 6 hours at a time?
Like head down. I'm very reclusive. I honestly, like even just coming to talk in this space, I get like so much anxiety. I have really bad social anxieties. So, but yeah, I wall myself off, which may not be the most healthy thing, but at least I have like social media to like put myself out there. But yeah, like most of my day is like get up, make the bed, take a shower, clean up after the dogs, and then sit here and draw and play on Twitter all day.
It sounds pretty idyllic. I think you like it does not surprise me. I don't know. It feels like a lot of us with various different anxiety issues find a slightly more comfortable home in the online side of things, and when you've got a community that's supportive of that, I think it means way less worry. But I appreciate the fact that you can come on and talk to us on here. We really I feel quite chuffed about that actually. I was going to ask what ambition wise, where would you like to take this stuff?
So ideally, I would like to eventually have like my own studio of like an animation studio. I would really like to eventually have to be a brand that creates cartoons that like are iconic like the ones I grew up with. I don't know how feasible that is. It feels like the landscape's changing for that. And it feels like more and more things are more independent. So I don't know if I'll ever be able to actually like own a studio with like that's producing, like cartoons daily and like their own channel and like things like Adult Swim and Cartoon Network. But like ideally, eventually, I would like to make some kind of cartoon or like some kind of animation with this.
And are you animating now? Are you creating little animations yourself?
Learning. I'm not great at it. I just do like little gifs occasionally. I'm still like in the early processes of learning it, and like I really need to like move beyond Procreate to like start. I played a little bit with After Effects, and like I would like to spend more time on that. But for right now, it's kind of building up my brand so I have the budget, which allows me the time to sit down and start really focusing on that.
Yeah.
So hopefully, sometime in the near future, I can make it happen though.
That would be amazing, I think, and like if anyone has the kind of visual imagination to pull that off and to inspire other people, I think you're it because yeah, your stuff it I don't know, it's incredibly kind of joyful to me, and I assume that's the intent. It makes me very happy to look at it, and yeah, I'm delighted that you could come on to chat to us tonight.
Thank you. I'm glad you guys had me. It's really nice chatting with you. It's a very nice, calm, like kind of vibe. So it feels very cozy here.
Awesome, good. I'm glad, and we will be uploading this to our YouTube and SoundCloud as well, so we can sort of keep them archived after Twitter decides that that's enough for them. So we'll share that and make sure that you've got that available as well for your future reference if ever you want to listen back or point anyone in this direction.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. It's been this is my first time doing this by myself as well, so it's a first for a number of reasons. But we really appreciate you coming on Arts Play Radio, and I want to just mention again that we will be hosting uh, a event at NFT London next week in a pub called the Market Tavern in Mayfair. The event is called Luxapalooza, and it'll just be a sort of chilled space for artists and creators and collectors to mingle, chat, and watch some art being made and talk to people who like to make art. If you're interested in that, drop me a line on Twitter. It's Yo Ike Carton at Twitter, and then hopefully we'll see some of you there. Once more, thanks so much, and we'll see you again, I think, in a couple of weeks when we come back with some new exciting guests. All right, everyone. Thanks very much.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, man. Bye.
Bye.